In the last video, we have outlined the simple steps in a general export process and considered some key information required in trade negotiation or transaction, which should be captured on your commercial invoice and PO. Now, although there may be two parties in the contract, do you think there are other parties involved in the shipment process? Obviously, yes. In this video, I would like to offer some good advice, such as why the need for documentation and the roles of other parties involved in international trade. A term that pops up often in international trade is documentation. Documentation refers to the physical and electronic paperwork processes that accompanies every shipment. The traders sometimes need to apply for special certification or permit when exporting food and pharmaceutical products, and likewise the importer also. It may be necessary to state in your pro forma invoice or the invoice itself that price does not include legalization of such documentation if it is beyond the means of the exporter to provide it. In Singapore, trade documents must be kept for 5 years. You may have come across the term third-party logistics providers and freight forwarders. Most traders rely on freight forwarders and third-party logistics companies to assist with the booking of cargo space. They may book the cargo space with shipping lines or airlines depending on the nature and urgency of the shipment. Freight forwarders, normally they work with appointed partner agents overseas. This could be the subsidiaries such as, for example, DHL or Yamato Transport or Nippon Express or Nitsu that have various international network. In countries where they do not have their own setup or office, they will work with agents. Custom brokers are specialists that handle import as well as export custom clearance. Many freight forwarders will have a department that handle such import-export clearance. An important party or entity that traders should be familiar with would be the Customs Authority. All traders must be registered with Singapore Customs before they can conduct business. Do you know that Singapore Customs and the Immigration and Checkpoints Authority, in short ICA, are two different agencies? Singapore Customs is a department under the Ministry of Finance, whilst ICA is the Border Control Agency of Singapore, which comes under the purview of Home Affairs. Singapore Customs collects revenue, like duties and taxes on goods, oversees regulations on trade, including those related to free trade agreements and strategic goods, and takes enforcement action against traders and individuals who do not declare controlled goods or bring in contraband items. In Singapore, goods that are subject to licensing and controls are required to be routed to the competent authorities, also known as controlling agencies, before being transmitted to customs for processing and approval. It is important to abide and observe all customs regulations because failure to do so will result in severe penalties. Ignorance is no excuse in our regime. You are highly recommended to consult the Singapore Customs website, customs.gov.sg, to inquire any latest updates or information pertaining to import and export of goods. Depending on the terms of delivery or the Incoterms that are used, traders may have to procure their own insurance. The contract of carriage between the shipping line or airline and the shipper may have very limited insurance coverage compared to the actual value of the goods. So it is not a good idea to rely on the coverage provided by the contract of carriage. However, traders should procure marine cargo insurance or air cargo insurance with insurance underwriters. It is important to note at this point that so-called all-risk insurance covers do not really cover every conceivable risk. A port or terminal refers to the facility where import and export cargo are loaded and unloaded to and from the respective transport modes. These modes can be ships, aircraft, or even railway lines. Rail transport forms part of the intermodal transport infrastructure and should not be overlooked if it benefits the transport part of the supply chain. Although truckers and freight forwarders and shipping lines and airlines are expected to know the port processes, it is also advisable for traders to know their port operators and to appreciate the roles played by the terminals. Port operators in Singapore are PSA Singapore and Jurong Port. The role of banks can never be underestimated. Traders need to work closely with their banks in order to settle maybe trade payments, get a loan, or even to handle documentary collection and or documentary credit facilities. This will be covered in more details in another topic. To recap, it is important for traders to appreciate the need for documentation, regardless of whether it is in traditional paper form or in its modern, automated, digital, or e-document equivalent. Correct completion and use of all the required trade documents is essential to successful importing and exporting. In this video, we have also outlined the roles of entities involved in the trade processes other than the exporter and importer themselves. We have come to the end of this video. International trade involves different parties and different documents indeed, so it can become quite complex and burdensome. In the next video, I would like to share how digitization has transformed global trade for the better.